Let me know when you're all set, Christine.
Just 1 second. Okay. We are good.
You all set?
Yep.
Great. All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen here at 6:01 p.m. In attendance is myself, Mike Ergo, Nita Kincaid, and Bob Carlson, and Christine Dias, Admin Finance. The purpose of the meeting is to it's a twofold on the agenda, which actually I don't have the agenda in front of me, so hang on a second. So it's number 2 on the agenda is review and acceptance of August 21st petition, and number 3 is act same pursuant to that petition. So just to so folks can understand that are joining us, and we are appreciative of the people who've taken the time to attend this meeting. The Board of Selectmen had called a meeting on Wednesday, the 19th, for the purpose of to call a special meeting to discuss the leasing of the middle school wing. And that meeting took place on Friday, August 21st. Concurrently, really almost at the same exact time, a petition came in for the same exact reason of why we were calling the meeting. So anyways, the petition and the meeting that we had already called for were for the same purpose. So we wanted to acknowledge the fact that the petition came in. We had already called this meeting today anyhow, so it's great that we were on the same page as, I guess, the petitioners with regards to wanting to have this meeting. So let me just read.
Mike, I'm just going to promote
Yes.
Rob Avina as the panelist.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Town Attorney Rob Avina is joining us for the meeting as well. Great. Rob, I don't know if you heard any of my intro there, if you were on the line, but you're unmuted, so welcome. You're muted again, Rob. There you go. Can you hear me? I can't hear you, Rob, but I know you are unmuted. Yeah, now you're muted again. You've probably got to make your audio on the left bottom there through your computer. I'm going to go ahead and read the call of the meeting. Hopefully Rob will figure out his audio there. In accordance with the governor's executive order 7JJ, a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen shall be held at the following location on the date and time indicated for the purposes of transacting the business set forth below, with the meeting details, which you are all aware of because you're on the meeting. I won't read that. And shall the town of North Stonington enter into a leasing agreement for the one-story wing of 298 Norwich Wesley Road pursuant to Connecticut General State Statute Section 7-163E. This meeting will also be the public hearing regarding the lease of the above property. In accordance with the governor's orders, this is how we're having to conduct business right now. I've kind of given a little bit of this over a few different explanations, but basically, we can't have regular town meetings like we normally would. So the Board of Selectmen is the legislative body in this case. And, the reasons for that are the governor's orders, but also just being sensitive to folks that would be left out because they don't feel comfortable coming to a meeting setting. So there's obviously a lot of reasons for the situation we're in, which no one is happy about. What I'd like to do is give a little bit of commentary about where we are and kind of how we got here. I see you, Rob. I don't know if you're able to talk or not now. But
Doing my best.
yeah, we
Can you
got
hear
you.
Here.
All right. Hey, even I can figure it out.
We
Thank
got
you.
you. I was gonna give a little bit of give a little bit of history here, just to set the table for the discussion, and then certainly public comment. Is there anything you want? I don't know if you heard me set the table on where we're at. If you have anything you wanted to add with regards to that.
No, I think as you said quite well, Michael, that this Board of Selectmen meeting, basically pursuant to the governor's executive orders, is taking the place of and replacing the town meeting. You guys will be adjudicating the question presented on the petition.
Correct. And there will be public comment. So let me give a little bit of background as to, I guess, what we're talking about, why we're talking about it, for some people that may not be familiar with this whole process. So, and I'll try to give the Cliff Notes version of it. So in May 2016, the town passed a resolution giving the School Modernization Committee the authority to begin reconstruction of our schools. So this resolution was written and approved by the prior first selectman, Sean Murphy, and that Board of Selectmen. And at the time, I was a volunteer chairman of the School Modernization Committee. And so we were working with what we had there to try to put a plan together for the schools. And as we moved through the bidding process, the committee realized that the funds that we had allocated may not be able to accomplish all the goals that were laid out. And in the resolution that was put together by the prior administration, it gave the authority of reduction of scope of work on the project to the committee. So in January of 2018, in the midst of a petition of a revote on the school project, the committee had received bids for the project, and in review of the bids, they realized the possibility existed that other priorities may take precedence over the middle school demolition. So the contract they proposed with the contractor made the tear down of the middle school an alternate, meaning it would happen if funds would allow. And I have an excerpt from this meeting as a point of reference, just so folks can have a little bit of history on this. I'm just gonna share that really quick, just so we have a little clarity on that. Let me just finish. Make sure people can see my screen. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes, very well.
This meeting was the largest meeting we've ever had in town, attended by somewhere around 800 people, we think. And I'm just going to play for you where the middle school demolition was discussed at the time.
One of the decisions that I know a lot of people have been having conversation about is the demolition of the middle school wing portion of the high school. And I want to be clear as to why we made that decision. We felt as a committee unanimously, it was a fiscally responsible decision to defer the conversation about what we were going to do with the middle school for a couple of different reasons. First of all, we didn't want to go over budget. And with construction, as you know, there are always things that come up. We went through the budgeting process and we were very conservative and put extra money in places like abatement that we thought, may go over, and we didn't know. So we thought, let's err on the safe side and put some extra money there. And we also weren't sure where we were going to stand with the space standard waiver. So we got that information actually afterwards. So it's not that we are not planning on doing demolition to that part of the building, but we do have people that are still interested in looking at the space, seeing if we can use it in a more creative and a beneficial way to the town. So we didn't want to just close the door on that. And we also wanted to make sure that we had enough money in our contingency and for the overall project to complete it. But that is a discussion we're going to have, and it is our top priority as a committee.
That was Dr. Pamela Patemry, the chairwoman of the School Modernization Committee, presenting at that town meeting where we had the highest attendance of any town meeting before. following this meeting, the results of the revote passed at a 2-to-1 margin. So we feel, I feel like it was really, people were well informed. Prior to that, if you remember in 2016, it was like a 3-vote swing on the school project. But after that presentation, the vote passed as a 2-to-1. So it was well explained, and basically knowing, as we went through this process, this Board of Selectmen was become included as the project was winding down, as they were getting the work done at the elementary school, that we may not have the funds available to demo the building. So this board, Nita, Bob, and myself, put together a committee to investigate alternative uses for parts of the building that would not be used by administration. That committee met a number of times and reported back into the board, our board, and basically where we ended up was that we would be willing to lease out potentially the building, that part of the building, to an educational facility, someone who deals with education. And just to be clear, while the information that was given to the School Modernization Committee from the prior Board of Selectmen, so back when I was on that board, it indicated that the building wouldn't be useful. Our review of the school has affirmed, while it didn't make sense to try and repair it for use as a public school due to the code requirements and upgrades, it would be a good building for other educational entities who did not need to adhere to these stringent codes. So with all that being said, where we are today is that we have gone out with a bidding process, and we are currently in the midst of negotiations with a fantastic entity who is very interested in planting roots in North Stonington and being a part of our community, and we're really thankful for that. But ultimately, we recognize that as much as we've tried to communicate, I feel that there's been a lot of mixed information, maybe misinformation about this. And so I think some folks are under the impression that the building was definitely going to be torn down, and whether that's because, there wasn't enough information out there, or things have been talked about, maybe misrepresented. I can't speak to any of that. But what we want to do is make sure that the people's voices have the opportunity to be heard on this, and really try to explain why we are where we are. And certainly in the event that we weren't to lease out this portion of the building, there's going to be a cost associated with either tearing down the building or maintaining the building, as far as, maintenance and utility costs and things of that nature. So that's a little bit of a short synopsis of where we got to where we are. With that, I think probably good to have the selectmen weigh in if they would like, before we have any sort of public comment on this topic. So I don't know if either selectmen want to. Yes, Bob.
Okay, so I'll start. I think the way I imagined it, and I know I saw everything you presented, and the way I imagined it was that the building would be taken down and the 2-story wing would be rented out. And that was the plan that I had imagined. And a lot has happened since then with the additional PCBs, and obviously the money that was going to be there for the school coming down, that ship has sailed. The money's not there for whatever reason, and we think it's mostly because of PCB. The removal of PCBs, that we don't have it. So there's nothing we can do about that. But I think that the end game should be for the town still would be to rent out or lease out the 2-story wing and take the middle school building down. Now, it may not happen right now. It may be, we might have to lease or rent out the 1-story wing first, and then let that renter evolve to the point where maybe we can get some grant money, some funding to help the town take down the middle school wing and move them over to the 2-story wing, which is what the original intent was of the original resolution. So I think that there's 3 main choices. It's either we lease out the building, which in my opinion, if that gets us closer to leasing out the 2-story wing and eventually, and take down the 1-story wing eventually, then that seems to be the best choice. The second choice would be to not lease it out and pay to have it demolished. And the third choice, and I think is the worst choice, would be to do nothing and let the let the wings sit there and deteriorate, which it's in our village. We don't need to have an empty building sitting there getting worse looking. We'd have to maintain it just so aesthetically it doesn't look that badly, which would be a cost to the town. And the price of demolition could be going up at the same time. So in my eyes, the town has three options. It's lease it, tear it down, or let it sit. And I think leasing at this point, if it gets us closer to where I like to see the end game with it coming down in the two-story wing leased, then I'm all for leasing it. That's as far as that's portion of the meeting. That's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Bob. Nita, do you have any commentary?
Not really. I'm on the same plane that I think all three of us are. I can't be sure about you, Mike, if you're in the same place. I definitely think at this point that we ought to move forward with the leasing if we can get a good lease. And then I think it would be very hard for us to go to the demolition and to try and wait and let the building get ruined in any way at all, or not ruined, but be something that we don't need to have, basically. So I agree entirely with Bob, and I don't know exactly where you're coming from, but.
Thank you. I guess my perspective is, if there's a good use of the building, and I think we all kind of realize that, to have an educational facility come out was I don't want to say a needle in a haystack, but there's only so many of them, and that's really what we're kind of trying to find based on the deed restrictions. And we have one who's interested. That's a great thing, and if we can put that building to use, whether it's short or long term, to me, long term would be great. I'm not really personally hung up on the intent. I understand back when we passed it, I think the intent, I know, because I was pretty intimately involved, and I don't think there'd be any disagreement, was we wanted to take down the building because we didn't really see that there was a use for it in front of us. We thought it probably needed more work than it was worth. And we didn't want to see a dilapidated building in town. I'm pretty sure that's really what the intent was. And so if there's a way to have the building not become dilapidated, to have great use that sits with the deed, that's the only thing I disagree with. We all agree with the same exact thing, except maybe whether it's a shorter or long-term thing, and I guess that could be ironed out. But I do agree with you, Bob, that although we have not even talked about the two-story wing yet, and that was because up until I think within the last week and a half, I did get verification officially from the Board of Ed chair that they don't have intentions of using it for swing space with the COVID. That's the only reason we haven't done anything with even investigating use for that space, because we thought we may need it for our own school, which we do not. So I agree with you, Bob. I think our recollections are all exactly the same. I think we thought leasing out the two-story wing was really going to be the first step. And this kind of opened up a different opportunity. And I think it's an opportunity for a facility that sees the potential in this space because of the fact that it has some things that the other side doesn't have, like a cafeteria, like a gym. So with all that being said, that's a little bit of the history, and I guess our comments. If there's nothing else from the selectmen, we can open it up for public comment.
I'm good.
Good. Okay. So I just would mention we'd like to keep public comments to 2 minutes each in respect for everyone's time, so everyone has an opportunity to speak. So we'll go to the first commenter. I believe that is Sean Murphy. Sean, you're recognized. You just have to unmute. You're recognized, Sean. You just have to unmute. If you're calling in, you have to hit *9 to unmute. You may have called.
I think I'm unmuted now.
Yes, you are. Yep.
I'd like to get back to the first item on the agenda. We seem to have passed that up for comment, but there was a petition for a town meeting, and this is not a town meeting. We had the ability to have a town meeting after the 9th of September. And I want to know why the selectmen pushed to have this meeting instead of what the petitioners had requested.
So I can comment on the September date, and I'll let Rob comment on the rest of it. But the governor extended his executive orders today to February. So just as expected, we expected that those executive orders would be extended because their COVID is not gone. So that wouldn't be the case. But Rob, I don't know if you want to explain to the caller about why we're doing it the way we are.
Sure. Can you hear me again?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Well, again, looking at the petition, we had to research the fact that a petition for a town meeting was occurring under the governor's executive orders. And under Executive Order JJ, it's pretty clear that the request itself was concerning whether or not the town lease town property. And within that JJ order, leasing town property is part of what the governor stated was a subject of something that the towns can go forward on. But because of COVID-19, he is still not allowing the town form of meeting to occur. And he specifically registered that action to be one to be considered by a board of selectmen. So that's why we are legally where we are now.
Is there anything that kept us from having a virtual town meeting?
It specifically said a Zoom. The Zoom meetings are pretty much presumed right now. It's kind of, of course, I'm a member of Connecticut Association of Municipal Attorneys. We're looking at what everyone is doing pursuant to the modified governor's orders. But there's nothing really about trying to set up a town meeting where you could go well over the governor's numbers for a in-house meeting.
No,
so that you have to follow the order.
I'm talking about a Zoom town meeting.
If you're going to go to Zoom, it's already spoken of within the orders of the governor that it be turned over to the Board of Selectmen with a presumption that the Board of Selectmen meeting will be a Zoom meeting. So it's built right into that order.
Thank you, Sean. Brian, I believe that's probably Brian Rathman. You are recognized, Brian.
You hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, yeah. Well, I think I'm gonna just have to say what I have to say, as you know. As far as I'm concerned, when we voted on this school to come through, that building was supposed to be demolished. And if we don't have the money, then we get the money, whether it's from the state or whatever. But what really bothers me is because the big school push was he wanted all the kids on the other side. That school was unsafe for our children because of the PCBs and all the safety issues. That's why we couldn't fix it up, because we asked that question at the meetings. Why don't we fix that up? And that bothers me to no end. And the other thing that bothers me, since I'm an American citizen, is supposed to have a right to vote, even though that this governor of ours says we're not allowed to vote, to me, that is going against the Constitution of the United States. And I know you're there, Robert Avina, attorney, and I think the representatives we voted for in this town should be push this off. If it went on to February now, then we go to February. Take the building down and do what, I haven't seen it yet. Everything we vote on this town gets changed around. It happened with almost every building in this town, and I'm getting tired of that. My vote means nothing so far, and it's getting worse. And I don't like that idea of that. And I want you, I really urge my request to be pushed forward by our representatives to make sure that there's no vote to push through another thing in this town without the people of this town having a say in it.
Thank you, Brian. if we could just get through the public comments, if that's all right. Brian, you know, we understand that, I tried to explain it in my opening comments, but the school, you're right, as a public school, there was criteria that did make it something that wouldn't have made sense to renovate for our uses because the criteria was so stringent. I thought I mentioned that, but just to re-mention it. But we hear you, Brian. Thank you. Let's see, ending in 9358. Maybe that's Gary.
Yeah, Gary Anino, 91 Main Street. Just for everybody else on the line, to unmute, you press *6. To raise your hand, you press *9. Just want to get that out there because it's not written anywhere. The only thing I want to highlight is that the environmental liability about that wing of the school isn't going away. You're accurate in that as a charter school or private school, they don't fall under the same rules as a public school. Now, it's only a matter of time before that ticking time bomb will also go off, and then we'll have to take it down anyway. And it won't get cheaper between now and then. That's all I have to add.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate your comment. Brett, you're recognized.
Hello, Brett Mastriani. Just a few comments. One, I do agree if we can get a lease that makes sense and make sure we're protected long-term, that it's the right thing to do over paying for a demo that doesn't work. But I have to say that the town should be voting on this. And your position that on the second vote of the school to go through, that it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming because we already spent $1.6 million and we already committed to about 30 contracts valued at $38 million. The project was already underway. And if you read the call to that meeting, it says resolved that the town of North Stonington can continue with the construction of a new Wheeler Middle High School addition and renovations to the gymatorium, an addition and renovations to North Stonington Elementary School, demolition of portions of the existing Wheeler Middle School and High School, and other improvements to be used for North Stonington Board of Education Central Office, and issue bonds, notes, and temporary notes to finance the portion of such appropriation not defrayed from grants. So the people that voted, some of those people voted because we already spent the money. So, and they were under the impression if they didn't attend that meeting, didn't pay attention to that one sentence, that demo was happening. Now, I'm not saying that now is the best time to do that if we have a leaser, but I do feel the town should vote on it. And in Governor's Order 7JJ, number 4, section III, that's where it talks about leasing if it's deemed essential. This is not deemed essential at this point. We put out the RFP. We put that timeline in place. And furthermore, on 7JJ, I guess the attorney, you know, every attorney has their own opinion, and that's why there's a court and judges that determine other opinions. But the executive order, the second to last paragraph says, nothing in this order shall be construed to prohibit a municipality from conducting any in-person meeting, approval process, or referendum, provided such municipality first consults with local and state public health officials and conduct such meetings, approval process, or referendum in a way that significantly reduces the risk of transmission of COVID-19. So I don't understand the point where you're saying this is the only way. The governor specifically states that if we can find a safe way to do it, we can hold the town meeting or a referendum. And we did a primary in a safe and efficient manner. And there's no reason we can't do this for this project. And that way it moves forward with the consent of the residents of town, because our legislative body is the town meeting. And then there's no halo or dark cloud hanging over this project. So I urge the selectmen to push this to a referendum if they will not do a town meeting. Thank you.
Connie. You're recognized, Connie. You just have to unmute.
Okay, here I am, Connie Berardi, Pine Woods Road. I can hear what everybody's saying. However, if the town does not have the finances available currently to demo this portion of the building, to have this building sit idle, and as we all know, buildings become hazard looking, unattractive. And I can't see any reason why we wouldn't want to take some income in to offset the cost of the maintenance that has to take place. The second thing is, to Brett's question is, to have a safe place for hundreds of people to be 6 feet apart, I'm not sure we have that capacity to do something like that. So I can't see the reason that we can't allow our selectmen who are voted in to have the good of the people to be able to make the right decision for the town.
Thank you, Connie, for your comments. Appreciate that. I'd like to ask if there's anyone out there that has not made a comment that wishes to comment as part of this meeting. Before we go to any second commenters, I want to make sure we hear from anyone for a first time. And I want to make sure before, I'm sorry, I'll go to Carl and then Bob, I apologize. I think you had something. I don't know if you wanted to add or you want to just hear everybody through. Is that all right?
No, but at the time I wanted to respond to Brian, but I can wait till we're done.
All right, thank you. And I see Carl has his hand up. Carl Johnston, you're recognized.
Carl Johnston. I got a couple questions. I don't know if they were answered way before or not. But I guess let's just say the cost of the repairs and maintenance for the next few years versus the tear down. You don't need to answer me right away. Why not try and lease out the 2-level section now so that any repairs and maintenance that was done stays with it and leave the other section alone? So if it's coming down, so you're not repairing a piece that you're going to try and tear down later. And then the last thing would be, at the time of your lease, who is responsible for bringing the whole building up to so they could use it? Are we responsible for fixing the light fixtures, the windows, setting the air conditioner in place, all the air stuff? Or is the renter going to take care of most of that and we get an income? Thank you for your time. And
Thank you, Carl. We won't get into a lot of those questions because they're under negotiation, but we did ask the potential renter to be paying for any of these types of things. And so that's kind of where that is right now. And we again, we are fortunate. I know if this organization happened to be on and they might have representatives on, we're very fortunate to have had such a great organization interested in us, and we appreciate their patience as it's a town building. It's a process that we have to go through with the town. So I have another caller here, ending in 4211. You're recognized. You just have to unmute. There you go. You're unmuted. 4211. We can't hear you though, but you did look like you unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, good. Joe Holt here. My question is, say we did rent this out, what is the operating cost of the school as of today? If we open this school up and we start renting it out, what is our operational cost versus what we're going to charge per square foot? And if that's so, what is our end run? How much per month would we actually make in profit? And where would that money go to? Would it go to a general fund? Would it go towards keeping our costs down on the current school's loans? Possibly paying those down early? Or would it go into a regular school fund for any future repairs?
No, thanks for your comment. Again, a lot of that's something that be negotiated as far as part of the process. We obviously, I think it would be obvious that the town's perspective is that we would like to maybe make money on this, but certainly not cost the town any money. The Board of Ed definitely has space in that building that they're paying for. So to answer your question, I guess open-endedly as possible, as it's a negotiation process, we're kind of working on that right now, but obviously we're looking out for the best interest of the town as your leadership here on that.
Mike, can I say one thing about the utilities for the building?
Sure, Christine. Yes.
So, people are talking about whether this is something that needs to be done now or can wait until February. We have monthly bills that need to be paid for the school, whether it's the gas or the electricity or the water. And the town will be liable for those bills as they continue to come in if we don't have someone to pick up those costs. So that's why from the financial side, I view it more as something that is timely, because we will continue to have those bills come in that need to be paid, whether the town's paying them or it would be my preference that somebody else would pay them. So that's why it can be viewed as something that is somewhat time sensitive.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. It's only going to get more expensive as the winter goes on, certainly. Ellen Spring? Ellen? Or is it Dan? I don't know, but it's a picture of Ellen, so.
It's not me, it's Dan.
Yeah, it's actually Dan Spring, Chair of the Board of Finance from Wyosip Road. And also a member of the School Modernization Project Committee. Most people may not know that putting the demolition of the middle school to an alternate status, we had looked at separate bids relative to the demolition, and we were talking $1 million. And so it came with a big price tag. And that we had nearly that an overrun on remediation of biohazard material in the renovated elementary school. So people didn't know that. I think that's important to know. I think leasing the property certainly makes sense, particularly to a educational entity that would be aligned to the deed restrictions of the property. And I think just augments the investment we have made as a town to education. Certainly we are seeing it in the outcomes of our students and our ranking in the state against other schools. And the talk in the region is that we have state-of-the-art facilities. So it certainly would make sense to kind of expand our investment, and that it's a benefit to the town in terms of not having to spend the $1 million for the tear down and bringing in revenue. And I'm sure that there's also assets available by the leaseor to make updates to the property. So, I mean, I think it could be a plus all the way around. So it certainly would have my support.
Thank you, Dan. And thank you, Ellen. Do we have any other hands that would like to be raised from folks that have not yet spoken? Yes, I'm recognizing last numbers 0312. You're recognized.
Hi, this is Lisa Mazzella calling.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, I feel it's very important to go to the referendum. The people in our town, we need our voices heard. I personally feel that we should go into negotiations in order to lease out the space in the building. I think it's the right thing to do, and I think it's the thing that makes sense. But more important is, no matter the outcome and what the referendum would be, is just the very idea that the residents' voices were heard, whether for or against. I mean, that's our voice, is the vote. And if there is, a safe way to do it, to have the referendum, which we proved that there is, with the primary, I think that that would really, be the way to go. There's a divide in our town, and being denied the right to vote, even, by governor's orders, if we can successfully do that, I think that would widen the divide. We bring people together, and I think the town as a whole could accept whatever the outcome is, whether we lease the building or not, just because the simple thing that their voices are heard. And that's my only comment.
Thank you, Lisa. I know the three selectmen talked last meeting about the possibility of a referendum. I'm sure we'll talk more about that after we hear from everyone who would like to comment.
I appreciate that.
Yep, thank you for your comment, Lisa. I don't know if Ellen, did you want to speak? I saw that your hand is up, but I don't know if it was on purpose or on accident. So if you don't, just let us know. Dan already spoke, so it's not for Dan.
Yeah, Ellen had just left. So yeah, I think she's good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any other speakers who have not spoken yet that wanted to be recognized? Any other speakers who have not spoken yet that wanted to be recognized? I have 7108. Go ahead. You're recognized. You just have to unmute.
Star 6 to unmute.
Star 6 to unmute. Thank you, Christine. Yeah, there you go. You're unmuted.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi.
Yes.
This
Hi.
is Carolina Howell,
Hi, Carolyn.
495 Providence. Hi. I just would like to say that I agree with Lisa Mazzella, what she just said. I think it's very important for this to go to a referendum. The people need to have their voice heard. And I think the vote is the way to get a solid answer. Either the people are in support of this or they're not. But if you don't go to a referendum and let the people be heard again, I think that you will have lost their trust. And I think that's a bad place to be. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments from anyone who hasn't spoken yet? Anyone else would like to raise their hand? 6667, you are recognized.
Mike, how you doing? This is Ed Lawnard, 79A Pinewoods Road, North Stonington, Connecticut.
Hey, Ed.
And hello, how you guys doing? I would just like to see a referendum because then people would feel that their vote counted. And basically that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Ed. Appreciate the comment. Thanks for being here. Anyone else that would like to speak that hasn't spoken yet? 5878, go ahead. 5878.
Can you hear me?
We can.
This is Ann Norwalk. Hi.
Ann, good to see you.
Been trying and trying. I think really we need more information, like sort of a full budget of the expense of everything and the anticipated income before you really can make a smart vote, whoever makes it. And before the people vote, they would need to know that as well if you're going to go to referendum. And I realize you're still negotiating, so maybe you need to go through that a little more so you have some better numbers to tell everybody. I think it's great that it can be rented. I think that's a good thing. But we need to do it with our eyes open.
Thanks, Ann.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else who hadn't spoken yet wanted to be recognized? This is we'll make it if I'm not seeing any other first time hands, we'll make it oh, here we go. I see one. Mark Leonard. Yes, Mark, you're recognized.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just looking through some of the notes I've been taking on the call and some of the things that I've heard through other boards and committees. It sounds like there's a deed restriction on this area and the library foundation in charge of it is not really interested in changing that restriction. I agree with Bob's three sort of points of action there. We either got to lease it, which must be an education lease, demo it, which I've heard could be, wherever the RFP lands for that, upwards of $1 million, or just let it sit there. And those utilities will cost us roughly $250K a year. I don't know where that money's coming from now because I don't think it's there. So I think even if we are to do a referendum, which I think Mr. Ravina could probably speak to a little more accurately than me, my concerns for that are making sure that there's a way to vote for people that still are not comfortable voting in person, which would need to be addressed and paid for by the town, or some sort of emergency order that would have to happen in order to pay the monthly bills while that building sits there while we figure out a referendum. And then just forgive me if I'm wrong, so in terms of the essentialness, we need to get the money to pay for that wing while it sits there one way or another. But I guess my question is, I forgot what my question was, never mind. So I was just getting sort of where we're at with that. So I definitely support the lease option, at least in the short term, because we need to get money to pay for that, and then hopefully get lower demo bids. But in the end, something's got to be paid for now. My question was, did you say earlier that the governor's order was extended?
The governor's order has been extended. His emergency declaration has been extended through next February.
So then my question is, if we're waiting till next February, you can't just let the building sit there and not pay utilities or whatever on it. So either way, we have to pay for that as a town. So we got to figure that out. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And I know Bob talked about that at the last meeting, calling ledge late, and there is a way for us to look at a potentially safe referendum. So we can talk more about that after the comments are done. Are there any more comments from folks who haven't spoken yet? I see Galaxy S9. You recognize Galaxy S9.
Yes, this is Kathy White calling in.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thanks for calling.
Now, if I'm understanding the beginning of the conversation, you first had to wait to see if the schools were going to use the newer part, the 2 stories, and they're not going to be using that, correct? So
That is correct. That is correct. Although I'm not sure it's much newer, but yes.
But it is newer compared to the middle school wing, the old part. So if we're going to look into it and have them lease it, why can't they look into the 2-story? And then if we do lease it out, save the money or wherever we put it to, so we can demolition the middle school part, because eventually, like somebody said, it's going to cost us down. They're still going to need repairs to come up with the money for that, and it's going to be more costly down the road. And I do feel like as a town, we need to have a referendum and a vote and a say, just because our town has been in an uproar for months because we haven't had our voices heard. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Kathy. I mean, just to add, if I could, I don't understand. I guess I'm not understanding. And I'd like to say that I don't think there's like this, we have to tear the middle school thing down. And if we have a use for the middle school and the building could be purposefully used, I don't think we have to tear the middle school down. But I understand all of the comments and all the concerns that I'm hearing. But instead of, thinking that, well, let's use the 2-story wing because that's, the middle school wing, if there's good purpose for it, it's a building that others have expressed interest in. So it is an asset for the town potentially.
Mike, can I make a procedural comment?
You may.
So we put out an RFP to rent the 1-story wing because we did not have the information from the school that they would not be using the 2-story wing. We did not solicit anyone to rent out the 2-story wing, so we can't move forward with anything on the 2-story wing unless we were to put out an RFP for that. So I know the thought was to rent out the 2-story wing from, months ago, years ago, before I was even here. But because of the guidance we had from the school at the time, we could only put out the RFP for the 1-story wing. So that's why that's what's being discussed for lease tonight.
Thank you, Christine. I mean, I think part of like some of the comments I'm hearing are that, well, let's just have whoever these interested folks are, just go over to the 2-story wing. And that's like, hey, I just looked at a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, but here, move over to this 4-bedroom, 5-bath. I mean, these aren't the same. Don't have the same characteristics. So there's certainly no guarantee that there would be interest from any party in a completely different wing that has different criteria and different parts to it. Other commenters from anyone who hasn't spoken yet want an opportunity. what I'm going to do, if I don't see any new blue hands, which I don't, I do have 2 repeat commenters. So we'll go to those commenters, and then we're going to go to the selectmen. So this will be kind of the final opportunity for anyone who hasn't spoken. All right, and with that being said, not seeing any more hands, I'll recognize Sean Murphy. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, in the town meeting that you said was the largest one attended, Pam, and you played it for us. Pam said that to defer the conversation for the demo of the middle school. Well, the committee had that conversation for the last time on March 9th, and it was their understanding that they would be going to a selectmen meeting and bringing that the idea of approaching the state for additional money to do the demo. That never occurred, and one might believe that that never occurred because 2 people that had a financial interest in the middle school using the financial interest in the middle school.
It did occur.
Hey, I have the floor. So after March 9th, it did not occur in a selectman meeting, and lo and behold, one of the interested parties represents the school that was interested in the property, and yourself have a financial interest in the school being rented out. So I think that was improper, that was not brought to the Board of Selectmen again for a possibility. The project shouldn't be closed out with the state until additional funds are requested to demo the middle school. There's no reason we should pay 100% to do it when we could be paying 54% to do it.
Thank you for your comment.
I have another comment. And this idea that it being urgent now, when we knew the elementary school project would be completed about this time, there was a lack of planning that didn't account for the utility cost to be paid out of this year's budget when we all knew that it was coming at this time. So suddenly it's not, because if the selectmen weren't prepared for it and didn't include it in their budget, doesn't make it urgent for us now. We should take the proper amount of time to discuss this. And I would agree with Ann Norwalk in that we need to see the numbers, and we should see a copy of the lease that you are proposing the town sign with any school prior to going to a referendum. The last time we voted on this, we voted for demo of the middle school wing. We didn't vote at the town meeting, we voted at a referendum, and those people saw, as Brett mentioned, the resolution that was voted on included the middle school wing, and we ought to vote for it if we're going by referendum if we're going to be doing something different than that.
Thanks for your comment, Sean. So a couple things. I mean, I just want to make sure I point out, because you're spreading some conspiracy theories here. I have no financial interest, nor did I have any financial interest in this. In fact, it just so happened my wife worked for one of the bidders, so I actually withdrew my participation in this process at the time due to the conflict of interest, which was actually the correct thing to do at the time. So I don't want that false information being spread. And the planning of the selectmen was actually admirable when we appointed the school repurposing committee to be planful about this process happening. So thank you, Sean, for your comments. Brett, you're recognized.
Hello, Brett Mastriani again. Question, have we looked into the availability of selling the property? And obviously the deed restriction would follow along with that, if that's an option. And I have to say, I do agree with Lisa. All her comments were spot on about bringing it to a referendum would help not divide the town any longer. It would help not further the divide. And then the question, I guess, maybe Attorney Avina could respond to is General Statute 7-163E, the one that states we need to have a public hearing where the legislative body is the town. It says prior to final approval of such sale, lease, or transfer, that we need to have a public hearing. Does that mean that we should have the information like Ann said earlier, that so in here it says prior to final approval? Does that mean we should have that information before any vote is taken on this, whether it is a town referendum vote or the selectmen? I guess that part is confusing to me, as it says final approval, not initial approval.
Thank you for your comment, Brett. Appreciate that. And we would certainly confer with the attorney to make sure we were doing everything properly prior to taking any actions, as we've done, hence the reason we're here tonight. So thank you. So after hearing these comments, the selectmen, would you like to go ahead, Bob? I know you wanted to add something.
So as far as I think Lisa and Carolyn brought up the referendum, at our last meeting, I motioned that we went to referendum and we kind of tabled it to today. I have every intention of motioning it again before this meeting's over. Secondly, Brian, my question to you, Brian, is if you went to the referendum, if there was one, and you voted no, what would your answer be to do next? I mean, should we let the building sit there, or I don't know what you want to do. If you want to vote no just for the sake of voting no, that's up to you. As far as Ann and Sean go, the town does contracts all the time, and when the town is not involved in negotiations, whether it be the town administrators and the town employees, the Board of Ed and the teachers. I mean, we elect officials to be in positions, and then you trust them to do the proper negotiation. We have a subcommittee that's strictly doing the negotiations with any potential leaser of the middle school wing. So I guess you would have to put your trust in us that we're doing the proper job. The question on the petition, if we went to referendum, is does the town give us the authority to do that? Not to see every detail in the negotiation. I mean, that would be crazy to have contracts listed and then have the town vote on contracts. That makes no sense. And then the thing is, as far as the two-story wing, I had a conversation with Dr. Patamri months ago, and she told me that they were looking at getting a person to come through the middle school wing. And I said, why? The two-story wing is a 1964 wing. The middle school wing, which was deemed to be unsafe at the time, was a 1950 wing. Anyone that walks in the building can tell the difference which wing you're in. And being the chairman of the Board of Ed for those years, I know the difference in the buildings. And the 1964 two-story wing is much better than the middle school wing is. Yes, the middle school wing has a cafeteria, and which can also double as a gymnasium, but not every school needs that. And it doesn't mean that the other building couldn't be retrofitted. I think that now that we know the Board of Ed is not going to use the two-story wing, we have to satisfy this petition, which was calling for the ability to lease out the one-story wing, but there's no reason why we can't put an RFP out to find potential bidders for the two-story wing. Again, my intention would be to have the two-story wing rented out and eventually have the one-story wing taken down, as the town had wished for during the original referendum in 2016. So I think I covered most of the bases of what I heard, and that's where I'll leave off at that point for now.
Nina, did you want to weigh in on any of the comments? Or do you have anything to add?
No, I do not.
All right, so I feel that this board, based on the conversation we had last time, and whether or not the perception is based in reality or not, it doesn't matter. The fact is there's a lot of discussion out there about whether or not this should happen. Should they vote on it? Didn't they vote on it? I thought it was very clear through the process, but I'm just one person and then we're a whole town. And it sounds to me like the selectmen have an appetite for putting this to referendum, though I'm not sure that this is something that normally would go to referendum, but because of the fact that we're in unprecedented times, as we keep saying, no one wants to hear that word anymore, but so given the fact that no one has been able to vote, and I think there's a strong interest in voting, and I think that my board wants everyone to go vote, I will certainly, defer to the board. I have a suggestion that I would share, and just we could discuss it. And we kind of talked about it last time a little bit, but I drafted up just kind of thinking about what kind of vote would we take? And I think, Bob, you hit the nail on the head. It's, if we were to send this to a vote, the way it was worded, well, if the vote is no, then what? We're still left in the same situation that we have to do something. It is an urgent matter that we do something, because we're going to be, we're going to have to pay for it. And so my suggestion would be a question such as the following. Shall the town of North Stonington take one of the following actions? Choose only one. Enter into a leasing agreement for portions of 298 Norwich Westerly Road. That's A. B. Borrow up to $1.5 million to demolish parts of North Stonington Education Center, formerly North Stonington Middle High School. C. Take no action with the North Stonington Education Center, formerly North Stonington Middle High School, and continue to pay all utilities and upkeep maintenance cost for the existing vacant space. So if we sent it to referendum, the people would get their voice. They'd be able to select one of those options, and we'd have a definitive direction from the people, which is what we need. If we were to do this and go to referendum, to give the registrars hopefully enough time to pull it together, and to one of the callers' concerns, be able to have absentee ballots available, though we could not mail them with the time constraints we have. We could make absentee ballots available for folks to pick up safely at town hall, so they're not excluded from the voting process. We could hold a referendum on September 14th, which is a Monday. And we could, this is something, these are all things we should discuss, and I'm just giving you I'm just putting them out there for us to discuss. We could have the voting hours be the normal 6 to 8, or if because the absentee ballots are available, we may have lesser turnout due to the COVID, we could reduce those hours so that we could have poll workers not have to work as long a day, which has been done in the past. We've traditionally done a 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. vote. However, I would have to say the likelihood is less people are going to come out in person probably for something like this if they can get an absentee ballot, and that maybe we don't have to have those hours be so long for the sake of getting poll workers and really the safety of everyone. So, Bob looked into it last time with Ledgeley. It is possible for us to do a referendum. The governor's orders do allow us to do a referendum. And if that is the flavor of the selectmen, I was certainly would not stand in the way of that either. I understand the power of the people and their desire to be heard at the polls. So what are the selectmen's thoughts? Go ahead, Bob.
So since you just brought up kind of a change in the referendum to multiple questions, which I agree with, but I wouldn't mind seeing you back up to public comment for a couple of minutes to see if there's how that your suggestion that you just had, how that weighs with the people that are in the meeting. That's all.
Okay. I don't have any problem doing that. I don't think there's any, because we're treating this as much as a public meeting as we possibly, town meeting as we possibly can. I think having some open dialogue with people would be a welcome discussion. Nita, did you have any thoughts before I were to do that?
No, I agree with the way we're going.
Okay. I have a hand up from either Dan or Ellen Spring. I don't know if that was purposeful because it has been up for a while. Dan, if you wanted to speak, you can unmute. Go ahead.
Yeah, it started to be answered, Mike, with your last commentaries, and it started with Bob. I mean, if you're going to have a referendum, which I think there seems to be a consensus for that, it really has to be something that leads to a conclusion relative to the middle school. So it's either going to be, do we enter into a lease agreement that is appropriate to all conditions and beneficial to the town? Or do we put forward a resolution to borrow $1 million or more that's going to end up in having taxes levied to pay for that, to bring about a demolition? So it's going to be one or the other, because it does not benefit the town to leave the property unattended. And I think it's something that has to be answered. So you have to develop the referendum questions to bring it to a conclusion. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Yes, Sean, you're recognized.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on this multiple choice ballot, which I don't think is legal, but you forgot two options on it. If you were going to do such a ballot, that you would have a question on there, should we sell the property as well? And you should also have a question, you're directing people, you know, they're loaded questions. You're saying something about should we borrow the money, but should we pursue state funding for the money to take, or other grant funding to take the middle school wing down? And I would comment on something that was said in that about levying taxes. It may very well, if we're only paying 54% of it, we may very well be able to pay for this out of our excess surplus account that is currently, you know, twice the percentage rate that the Board of Finance last voted on, having a 7.5% surplus when we have over 15. So there's more options other than those three, and I would ask that you wouldn't approve the questions tonight without some more thought and without the attorney reviewing the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And just to be clear, I want to make sure, because I didn't comment on this the last time, we did go back to the state. We did ask them about further monies being available to tear down the middle school. They are not available. We authorized $38.5 million to expend for the project, and we have expended that. So that I don't want that to get out. I don't want people to be out there with that message thinking that there's monies available. That doesn't mean there's not potentially grant monies, you know, that could be looked at, but not through the state reimbursement program. Just want to make sure I'm clear about that, so there's no misconceptions leaving this meeting. 9358, maybe I think that might be Gary. Yes, Gary, your comment.
Hi, I wanted to say similar to Sean, hey, let's go to the bank and borrow $1 million. Why wouldn't we just mothball it, dial it back to damn near zero, give up the certificate of occupancy, and put it in next year's budget to do it? You know, we don't necessarily have to go borrow the money this year to do it. I would rather do what the rest of the world is doing and tighten our belts and figure out how to get this done. That's it.
Thanks, Gary. I think the point of the discussion was that it would be one option that folks could vote on. So I know people have opinions on it here, but I think that's kind of what we were talking about, was putting it to people to be able to vote, because that seems like what the desire is. Sarah, you're recognized.
Hi, thanks to Mike Ergo, Bob Carlson, and Nita Kincaid for walking us through all the impacts here. I have a couple questions, and I apologize if some of them are repeats. So for the option for leasing, is that somebody who's interested immediately and that would be automatic revenue for our town, or is that just the concept of leasing?
We have someone who bid on the RFP that was out that's interested in leasing and that's currently in negotiations for the building. So it's not a
Okay.
concept, it's actual revenue if we can negotiate the terms of lease, which we're in the process of. And Bob alluded to the fact that Bob and Gary are and Christine are on the committee for that process, and they've been doing a great job.
Okay, all right. And if we don't lease and we don't demolish, my understanding is that's like $250,000 a year that we have to maintain. Is that accurate?
I'm not sure that that's accurate. There's been a lot of numbers that have been thrown around, and don't forget the Board of Education did budget money for their space that they're occupying. We are currently getting bills in now, so we know that there's a cost. I don't know, Christine, if you want to weigh in any more on that at this time, but I'm not sure that that's an accurate figure. We don't maybe have that information tonight, so.
Okay.
I would say a very conservative number is $100,000. Very conservative.
Okay. Thanks, Christine. Would the cost of the lease potentially cover that so that it wouldn't impact the taxpayers?
That was the point of the lease, was to potentially not, I mean, maybe even bring in revenue for the town. But again, that's in the negotiation process right now. But at bare minimum, that was the goal, was to at least cover the cost and certainly the possibility of actually bringing in revenue for the town. So.
Yeah. Okay. And then the third option is the demolition of the 1.5 million, which would also be a cost to the town.
Yeah, and we did get bids that are less than that, but we're just discussing this right now. And if we're gonna go out there to talk about it, we might as well be not having to do this all over again if there's something unforeseen that comes up.
Yeah, I think so for my public comments, and thank you, I appreciate the opportunity to ask you a few questions, is, I think when you put something out for a referendum, for those citizens who aren't plugged in and listening to all of these meetings and able to, ask questions, they're not going to understand necessarily based on the way the questions are designed what the impact is. I personally remember, when I was younger and voting, not always understanding what the impact of the referendum was. So I think if we were to go to a referendum, it would be vitally important that the people voting actually get an opportunity to understand the full impact on the tax base before we did something like that. I would also hate for us to miss an opportunity, especially in these very hard times, to really seriously consider an option that could neutralize the cost that we're paying now in our taxes, or potentially bring in revenue and really offset people need the help and are hurting right now. So thanks for putting this together and giving the opportunity for people to talk. I think my only concern would be that we need to make the options, and the going to vote is certainly probably the right thing to do, but I think we need more communication on what the end impact is for the option, so people can really truly be educated and empowered when they go for that vote.
Thank you, Sarah. Brian.
Yeah, hey, answer Bob's question about the school being torn down. I'm looking at it this way. That building was neglected for years. That's why we had to go and build new schools, according to one of the reasons. So don't put another cent into it. And we're going to have to, it seems funny, we can find money for the schools anytime, then we should be able to find money to take that building down. And I'm still waiting to hear a real figure to take the building down. I hear $1 million. I heard that when we voted, and we were fine with it. But if there was a cost overrun on the new schools, then that school wasn't built on time. And and on schedule. I think we just gotta let that school go, not try to bring somebody in to a school that might be dangerous, where kids might get some kind of cancer or whatever. And I just think there will be a cost to the town, no matter if you lease it out or not. And I do believe that that will from the Wheeler family should be carved in stone and not try to be changed in any way. Those are my opinions, and you know that. And I think you had an RSP or whatever you call it to get numbers. And I don't know if you really got those numbers back, but numbers are important to people before they vote. So that's what I'm saying. Let's take some time and really think about this, not try to push it through. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Brett, you are recognized.
I have to say, I agree with Sarah about the education of the public. So I think maybe once we have numbers and proper information, then maybe you should go to another virtual meeting like this, whether you call it a virtual town meeting and then to a referendum, but getting the right information out there. And I have to say, Bob's idea of 3 questions is great, but I do think it should be accurate information. So 1.5 million is almost double what the lowest bid came in. So there is a range in there. So we probably should have looked through those RFPs, make sure they're accurate on the demolition, and then go with a number on there. So people are voting on accurate information. And I am a little concerned about the short-term option of a lease because the cost of knockdown could skyrocket over the next few years. So if we sign a short-term lease, who's to say that demolition isn't $2 million next time we have to look at it? And the other concern is that one of the potential tenants dropped out of this. So the RFP, we're only looking to lease out half of what we were trying to lease out. If I'm incorrect on that it's not just half of what we were trying to rent out, please correct me. But
That's incorrect.
What's that?
I said that's incorrect.
Okay. I was just going on what was said at the last meeting. But like I said, I think going forward with some options for people to vote on is important, but having the actual information of the dollar figures of what they're voting on is even more important. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Brett. No. Yes, Gary?
Yeah, I'm all set. Brian Rathman covered it eloquently. Thank you.
And I meant to ask before I recognized anyone else, I'm seeing a repeat hand come up. Do I have any first-time people that would like to speak before I go to the repeat hand? And then ultimately close it out for the selectmen to discuss. Any last call for anyone who hasn't chimed in on this for the first time? Okay, seeing no one else interested or having anything else to say on this. Sean, yep, you can go ahead and speak.
Yeah, a couple things. The roof on the middle school wing is 4 or 5 years past life expectancy. I would hope that any lease that you enter into would have the leasee covering the cost of that, because the payback is not going to pay for that. The revenue is not going to pay for that new roof that's going to be required. And I think you're a little premature tonight voting to go to a referendum. There was no call for the referendum on tonight's agenda. There also has not been any 824 zoning review on the lease of the property. And once again, I think you need to have the attorney or the state weigh in on the multiple choice questions?
Thank you for your comment, Sean. I have already spoken with the attorney, and so he's aware of the multiple choice questions, and they are legal.
Our 824 review with planning and zoning is this Thursday.
So it does not need to be done prior to any referendum call. It can be done afterwards as well. And if they were to vote not in favor of the 824, that doesn't matter, actually. I mean, certainly we want them to vote in favor of it, but it could still move forward without that. But it is scheduled for Thursday for them to discuss. Thank you for your comment. Do the selectmen have any further discussion as it relates to any of the feedback that they just heard? Yes, go ahead, Bob.
I think after hearing the discussion, I'm thinking that the multiple choice question may confuse things more. I mean, what the petition had called for that came in was does the town have the right to negotiate for the leasing of the one-story wing? That was what the question was that came in on the petition. That's what I was going to call for the referendum.
Yeah, that's also the question we called for the meeting as well. So.
Right. So I think in trying to be, I agree with them as far as the people that spoke on the fact that we don't have all the numbers. My feeling is still having someone in the building using it, and hopefully somewhere down the road we can RFP the two-story wing. And possibly what came up as a point, not in negotiations, but just in talk during negotiations, was that people that are in the wing may be able to get a grant if they deem that the one-story wing is no longer a use to them, a grant from the state at an 85% reimbursement rate to demolish the wing. Again, that would be if somebody was in the building using possibly the two-story wing and determining that the one-story wing is no longer. Now, I have not investigated that. That was said to me by one of the people that were proposing to be into as a lease. I think Attorney Avina was there when it was said. So there might be some options down the road as far as demolition, but as far as right now, the demolition question and some of the other questions maybe would make the referendum too confusing. I think the people spoke that they did want to vote, and maybe we should be voting on just the question that was brought up by the petition that the town received.
I think, go ahead.
I would like to agree with that. I think it really, when you listen to those questions, it really would, given how many people know about it and everything, I think we really need to keep it as simple as possible at this point.
I just want to wait to make sure Bob gets back. I don't know if he just.
I thought I was sitting in the dark.
Okay.
Now I have a light on, so
no problem.
I'm no longer in the dark.
I'm just going to be honest with you. Listening to all the comments, this is going to be, if we were to move this to a referendum, this is just there's going to be misinformation that's communicated. Unfortunately, things are going to get skewed. And if I'm one of the bidders, I'm sorry they have to go through this process because it's a town meeting. I want to re-emphasize my appreciation for their interest. But I don't support moving this forward as one question, because if it fails, then what? Then we have to go through a process of, what do we do then? I mean, then the building sits there, and then, I heard all the comments, but the thing is, we're elected to try to make these decisions. And if we weren't in the situation we're in right now, we'd be voting on this tonight. I don't see this going to a referendum. And this does not have to go to a referendum. We can vote on this tonight. I don't want to make any of these decisions. I don't want people berating me all week long if we were to do that. But ultimately that's what we're elected to do, is to make decisions. And we've got an offer on the table, basically, with some good negotiations happening. That makes a lot of sense to me. So I struggle to, I think people will have to do a good job of informing people about the questions as a 3-question, but I would like to have resolution. I don't want to send one question that's going to leave us in a position, if it were to fail, that then where do we go from there? We go through the process of having another referendum. and then it only delays things as well, because, as we know, one of the folks who are interested, they want to get in there because they have intentions to use the building. So, I mean, none of this is easy. None of this is easy.
But Mike, you can say, well, anytime we go to referendum, what if? What if the vote doesn't turn out the way that we'll say as town leaders would want it to turn out? There's always a what if. So I still believe we should go to referendum on the single question to satisfy the petition and see what happens. But I think that the idea that to give the town the ability to at least have the ability to lease that building, if we have a negotiation team that the town would have to trust that we're doing the right job, and we get the right people in there, it's still better than having the building sit there. And if we can't give people hard cost on demolition and what the cost would be for the building to sit there and do nothing we don't know how long that period could be. It could be months, could be years. It's tough as a voter to come in and vote on that. You're giving them three choices and they don't know which choice is the right choice. But if there's one question, it's either to allow us to move forward with a lease agreement or not. That is one choice. Again, anyone who said no, I think in their own mind, they would say, well, in their mind, they should say, well, what's next? If I say no, then what's next? What's going to happen to that building? I mean, $1.1 million, $1.2 million, $1 million is going to fall out of the trees and just all of a sudden we're going to be able to knock it down, 3 weeks from now. So I have to disagree with you on that. I still think it should go to referendum. I think the town is dying to exercise their rights as taxpayers and citizens. And actually, I will motion that we go to referendum, and we go to referendum on the question that was asked on the petition as what I want to do to begin with.
And I would second that.
So there's further discussion. There's a motion and a second. My concern is that hearing what we heard tonight and especially knowing some of the commenters about it, we are not going to have information about the leases. We are not going to issue information about the leases. We're not going to bring in anything to do with the potential leasers because it's not appropriate to do so. So I would just want to caution everyone that's listening to the call to understand that the negotiating team has the town's best interests in mind. So if this is to go to a referendum, which ultimately it sounds like it's going to in the form in which it was motioned, that there has to be a level of trust that we have and if anyone's concerned, I mean, I'm not even on the negotiating team. Not that there should be any concerns. I'm a very good negotiator. So, but I know that there's people that aren't my fans. So Bob is, chosen to lead that along with Gary. And I think they've done an admirable job with Christine helping to steer things and Attorney Avina being involved as well. So I would just like to comment that we're not going to have the information, and I just don't want to see misinformation out there about this because it's not fair to the process. And this is the hand we're dealt, and we're doing the best we can as the town to navigate these things. So while I don't agree with this, I am also a consensus builder, and I respect and trust my board very much. So you will not have an opposition from me on this. Not that it matters anyway, but just for the record.
This is
Good, Rob.
Sorry, Town Attorney Rob Avina. Couple thoughts, folks. Certainly, a motion, I believe, is in order if the Board of Selectmen deems as town meeting to move it to referendum. The question that I understand from the petition in front of me is, shall the town of North Stonington lease the old middle school wing located at 298 Norwich Westerly Road? So that was the petition question, basically the first question of the three. I just want to make sure that we refer to that would be the question posed. I think that's what the hearing was about tonight. We posted the property, we did the 7-163. And so everything is leading to that ultimate question of leasing that portion of the building. So at this point, I would say the motion is in proper order.
The only thing lacking in the motion, whether it's part of the motion or not, Rob, is the date and the hours. Should that be part of
Yes.
the motion? And
Yes,
the
I think
select-
it's time to decide that also as you go to make up and amend this motion with that information, Mike, yes.
So,
Rob, can we use the petition question was, shall the town of North Stonington lease the old middle school wing located at 298 North Wesley Road? The selectmen called the meeting with, shall the town of North Stonington enter into a leasing agreement for the one-story wing of 298 North Wesley Road? Can we use the selectmen's original language?
Up, I would be comfortable with either one.
Thank you.
Christine, if you want to add the dates, if we have that, dates and times, then I can amend, we can amend the motion. I can move it at that point.
I think we just need to discuss so the date we had talked about was September 14th, which is a Monday. The only thing we should discuss is, do you guys want to, because of the fact that we can make absentee ballots available for anybody, do you want to make it less hours so it's less of a burden on the registrars? I mean, I would only support that because of the fact that absentee ballots are available to everybody. Otherwise, I would feel bad for those that would need to vote in the morning. But because they can get an absentee ballot with advance notice, I don't see any reason that we couldn't amend the hours to be, say, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. Does the selectmen have an opinion on that?
I have no reason to disagree with you on that. I think 12 day would be fine and give our registers a little bit of a break since we just went through a primary election. But I think with absentee ballots and a 12 to 8 is reasonable.
I agree.
So then, Bob, you'd like to amend your motion to include those hours and that date?
Yes, and if Christine could amend it and then read it, I would be glad to move on it.
Okay, so the motion would be to move to referendum on September 14th from the hours of 12 to 8 with the question as presented. Shall the town of North Stonington enter into a leasing agreement for the one-story wing of 298 Norwich Wesley Road?
Yes, I agree. So moved. You can't make the motion, so yes, I agree with that motion.
Yep, so you amend your motion to that, and Nita, do you second the amendment?
Second.
Okay. Do you have any further discussion on it? All those in favor? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Nita, do you have something?
Only to the effect that we really have to put out information to the whole town in some way, very carefully, is all I was going to say.
Yep, we will do that and explain as best we can why we can release what information we can. And just at this point, just as a reminder, the town shouldn't take a position on something that's going to referendum any longer. So I think, it's all been discussed and vetted here, and I think we've expressed our opinions in this meeting. So now it's up for the people to decide with this going to referendum, which I'm sure many people are excited about. And certainly I, for one, will be very happy to be happy to see that happen. So it's great. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 3-0-0. That being said, I think that's all we had left to do. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Second from Nita, okay. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned at 7:34. Thanks everybody for your comments and you taking the time to come to this meeting. Thanks to the selectmen. Thanks to Attorney Avina who's left, and thanks to Christine. Have a great night.
Thank you.